How are you doing? Great? Well, so am I. I mean, the weather is amazing. I just came from a complete contrast weather. I've just been to the Cayman Islands. So it's from sunny 29 degrees. You can't wear your glasses because they're completely covered with the dew. And then here, one of my big questions is, and I like just for you to just sit down, sort of like feel the seats and just think about what is actually on your mind? What do you think most about again and again? Like, what are the sort of key topics that comes to mind? I will share mine. AI is definitely one of them. I also think a lot about the well-being of people and planet. I think about geopoliticals. We also think about really cybersecurity. And really, in a world that's going faster and faster, what does the word culture mean? All of those, and I think also this sort of hyper polarization is another one. And they're all on my list on topics that we have to deal with right now. But when we look in a greater context, in fact, short-termism is said to be one of the greatest challenges for humanity. And it's not just in the next decades. I mean, I don't do those sort of short 1 to 2 years forecasts. It came to my mind how important it is to think in the long term and think about what would the world look like in a, say, 10, 20, 50, 100 years' time. I mean, just think for a moment. In 100 years' time, there is a chance that somebody might be alive who knew you. And what is it that you would like to be remembered for? A recent survey by PwC found that 40% of CEOs agree that short-term shareholders are the greatest threat to better corporate values, and should I say also culture. So when we think in the short term again and again, we become firefighters rather than proactive change makers. But the question is, of course, what are the tools that we can use in order to think a little bit more in the long term? This timeline is one that we have created and we rework it all the time. Today I made the focus a little bit technology here in the center. And as futurists, we like great tools, you know. We look back to look forward, a great thing, past and present. Now, those are some of the most significant signposts that we see today, but also that we've seen when we go back. And then also, how does it impact people? How does it impact organizations, the way we live and work, really? So, 1929, the great economist John Maynard Keynes, he sat up in Cambridge in the UK and he drafted his 100 years forecast. And he foresaw technological unemployment. He also said that people will not really be working more than 15 hours a week by 2030 because, as he put it, we will have enough to lead the good life. 1950, a very interesting turning point because a very important lecture was given by the AI pioneer Alan Turing. And this is when he came up with the imitation game. He asked a very important question. Can a machine fool a human into believing it is another human? Interesting. 1970s, many of us remember that time. How many of you remember the oil crisis in here? Oh, 2, 3. So you guys might be baby boomers. Well, I remember it because I was born in 1962, so just like the back end of the baby boomers. There were 2 great forecasts. It was actually an executive at Shell. His name is Pierre Wack, and he really was very much into this idea of scenarios and looking into the future, and he foresaw those crises. 1983, the internet is born, and we haven't really looked back ever since. It hasn't been this nice, even curve of constant progress. There's been some bumps in the road. And I think with the 1990s, of course, we see also already starting the technological, social, and economic change in the landscape. 2 books that I will advise everyone to read if you want to look back, to look into the future, is Alvin Toffler's Future Shock. The idea is that we sort of live, the future shock is all about that we get the future shock because we are surprised by the premature arrival of the future. And I think we are a little bit in that state right now. And he also wrote the book, The Third Wave, a so-called famous book where he coined the term information age. And that book is said to be the sort of Bible for many of the tech executives that moved to Silicon Valley. Now, the tech revolution has obviously not taken anybody by surprise, but what we can say is that the last 30 years, most growth has actually evolved around technology. And when we look back just to the 1992, 6 of today's major tech companies didn't exist back then. So a little bit about the sort of evolution of technology. Now, the last 20 years, we've seen a major transformation, and especially because it's so different from the past. We've also had that AI summit that actually happened around year 2000, where we got more funding to AI. And in fact, this is a major game changer, not just for leaders and organizations, but also us as human beings. The future of software is obviously a very interesting topic, which I will not talk too much about that because I'm not an expert, but thank God there are a lot of them in the room. But I guess that ethical and sustainable coding will be one of the key things we need to think about. And then with the human in the loop, because it is essential to foster systemic change. So this is really just to give you an idea, how do we land in the past and the present and actually have the right lens to look into the future. Presently, the frontier technologies, those are sort of the green technologies that we look at, and then the sort of the wider aspect of technology. Those technology could be worth $9.5 trillion by 2030, and AI, of course, and the Internet of Things are really key drivers of that. Digital is instrumental, I would say, to enhance, regional and global value chains. But also when we adopt new security, I would say like decentralized application and blockchain that will help advance security. A lot of people are speaking about what should we worry about now with AI? What are the greatest challenges? And I will go a little bit more into that later on in my presentation. But I think that it's very much about improving trust and data integrity, because many organizations, what I've learned to many of the AI events I've been in, they haven't even started the digital transformation journey yet. So many people are actually behind. There are a huge sort of monster out there. This is all called technology. We don't know how to adopt. We don't know how to integrate it. But obviously, we are in safe hands because there are great minds out there that can help us on that journey. But when we speak about technology and online and AI, I just want to put a notice that still a third of the global population is not online. 3 billion people are not connected to online education, access to be entrepreneur on the internet. They cannot even work on the internet. So that is one of the things that we will say should be a human right. So what we are looking at, that I would say that we have great responsibility to use technology to make the world a better place. The future, everybody talks about it, but the future is now. I mean, fast adoption of generative AI have really raised concern among many. We had it yesterday at dinner. Will we live in a world without work? Massive unemployment, skill gaps, security, ethicals, environmental impact, all of those. The list is long. But what we also will see is, of course, the, I would say like the idea that we can automate coding, more complex tasks, and free us a little bit to focus more on the human-centric design, which I know we will hear a little bit more about also in the afternoon. To me, it's essential to question AI. We can't just adopt it. I've actually suggested in many forums that we have a global digital constitution. I don't think it's going to happen, but it's nice to see that many of the Nordics are leading in this conversation. So here we see a future fast approaching with the ASI, the super intelligence. In fact, Alvin Toffler was known for calling it the singularity. And here we can see the little line of 2 AI winters and then the AI summer. And this is really how fast it has happened. It is fast and furious, and it might be a scenario where human intelligence is outperformed by super intelligent machines, according to Ray Kurzweil, who actually works with Google. It's already happening. Now, quantum computing is also one of the other things. I mean, NVIDIA are building those massive computers, and I find them very interesting, but also somehow a bit scary. But in fact, they are solving problems beyond classical computers, and we will see more of that in the not-so-far future. Enough about the machines and the technology. Who are the people? So I don't know if you in the background can sort of read here. The baby boomers was born between 1946 and 1964. Who are baby boomers here in the audience? No baby boomers. One baby boomer. Hey, we are a team. I guess when most of the rest of you will be Generation X, that is basically, I can't really see it there, it's 1965 to 1980. Any Gen Xer? Yeah, that's almost the rest of you. Then what about the millennials? Oh, right. Interesting, because our generation, us two, our type of people, according to my son, we messed it all up, He's very angry sometimes when he sees that, what we've done. But in the US, the baby boomers are controlling over half of the wealth, and 3 in 4 of companies, S&P 500 companies, are led by the baby boomers. But there's hope, ladies and gentlemen. 25 years into the future, all Gen X, and us too, would be retiring. So who is going to be leading the future? Well, it'll be the millennials and the Gen Zs. They're also called the Greta generation. And then we have the Generation Alpha and the Generation Beta. And I can't wait. Just past midnight on January 2025, the first beta will see the world. And in fact, those 4 generations will shape the future together. And I know we have a tendency to look into the future and think those people, the next generation, will in fact, make it all happen. But we need to actually plant the seed now, and we need to do it fast. They are basically going to think very different. Values is high on their agenda. Diversity, curiosity, creativity, collaboration, communities are all some of the things that they would be very, very passionate about. But also they will drive the new thinking and values that potentially will cause a system change. And you will hear me say that a lot. We need a systemic change, because otherwise we will just do more of the same. We need to get out of our head and into our bodies, and actually for a moment just stop up and think about, how does it feel, all this stuff we're going to do? Now, I think that it's likely that AI, and I think it's already happening, that AI will be viewed more as a utility, a little bit like electricity and plumbing. I mean, when we ask people, they're not so interested in technology. They just want it to work. How many of you, sort of like analog hands, show of hands, think that AI will just be a utility when we look 10 years into the future, or be viewed as one? A few of you. Wonder what the rest of you then think about it, but we can talk about that in the break. I believe that the more things change, the more culture matters. I mean, everybody talks about culture, but what is culture? We are moving from a culture where everything is just about utility, and we are talking a lot about meaning, or capital P for purpose. And we need to rethink our purpose as individuals, as leaders, as organizations. I mean, Ask yourself, why would people get up in the morning and go to work for your organization? What drives them? I mean, why do you guys get up in the morning to go to work? How do you practice purpose? I mean, what is meaningful to people? What is actually meaningful? I think we have forgotten a little bit to ask that. So this is why I'm very passionate about the School of Life in London. Do any of you guys know the School of Life in London? 3, 4, yeah. So I happen to live in London, and on Sunday, instead of just reading the newspaper, I might drop into a local little, they often have them in churches, and then I call them the School of Life sermons, and they have invited inspiring speakers to talk about topics that they're passionate about. The founder, a Swiss philosopher called Alain de Botton, he believes that the pursuit of happiness, fulfillment, and human flourishing is the future of business. And I think that's interesting. He set up the School of Life, I think, maybe 20 years ago, and his idea was, together with a group of friends, some writers, an artist, a psychologist, to teach people emotional intelligence. I mean, he was teaching mundane things like how to have a holiday at home, how to have dinner together, how to tend your garden, more mindful things. And I think that is an inspiring way to look at the future. If we did that a little bit more inside organizations, would that then be enough to create a whole new way and meaningful purpose to go to work? Curiosity is another thing that I think, you can't actually, without curiosity, you can't create new things. The School of Life used both philosophy and curiosity to communicate new ideas for, good ideas for everyday life. Now, according to research, curiosity actually matters, and you can see it on the bottom line. Michael Dell, the founder of Dell Computers in Texas, was once asked, so, Mr. Dell, what do you think will be the most important leadership skills of the future? And guess what? He said, I will place my bet on curiosity. And as you can see from this quote, it's also how they get things done inside the company. They use curiosity to look at new opportunities. And this is how they've always mapped their future roadmap. Another thing that also comes to mind is that leaders that I find they're empathic, I can sort of check it out because it's the way they ask a question. They look you straight in the eye. They don't come from the head, it's from the heart. They're generally interested in you. And in fact, empathic leaders also score very high on curiosity. Now, how do we tap into the thinking needed to kind of make that all happen, all that sort of nice, fluffy stuff I'm talking about? Well, it's a good way to have a little mini methodology. I call this whole brain thinking or multidimensional thinking. And it's about how you balance the soft and I would say like sort of activate and balance right and left brain thinking. It's very important in problem-solving skills. It's key to critical thinking, but it's also how you ask more inspiring and informed questions in the present about the future. We need to ask the right questions as futurists, but also as leaders and organizations. We use this methodology in everything we say and do. It's basically about trying to understand how we can activate our curiosity and creativity. And also one very important thing, when we think about the future, we have to think in futures because there isn't just one, but potentially many different futures ahead. You ask leaders of today's organizations, I'm happy to say that 4 in 5 of CEOs will tell you that they spend more time than ever looking into foresight and scenario work. Jensen Huang, and I'm sure that you will hear lots of quotes from Jensen today, he says, never stop asking questions and seeking answers. Curiosity fuels progress. Somehow this makes sense. People sometimes tell me, oh, we've seen something similar, but I actually added the 4P business model. Many of you, all engineers in Sweden, are taught about the 3 Ps, people, planet, profit. But I thought it was a little bit, I wanted to, in a way, take it into the next century. John Elkington, a dear friend of mine, when he saw my proposal, because he was the one behind the 3 Ps, he said, I like yours a little bit more. I like that purpose bit. But it's very much about once you balance people and planet and you have a purposeful ethos to match that, then of course you will feed into your environment rather than just feeding off it. And that would lead to sustainable performance. All of that thinking, we use this to scan trends. And in fact, and you will have my presentation, we created a little sort of analog toolkit to sort of think, work, and play like a futurist. And all of those little icons there, we created a set of postcards from the future. I show you this because I think it's really nice also to get out of your head and into your body and play around with different scenarios. Foresight is a powerful tool, but it doesn't happen in an Excel spread or just asking AI, give me 4 future scenarios. You can do that forever and something comes out, but there's not that right human energy in it. And trust me, we use AI all the time and we love to beat it. We love to create something a little bit better. So we use them a little bit as our assistants. When we look at trend, we have the left brain thinking here. How many of you work with trends, by the way, on a daily basis? Again, 1 over there. 1, 2, 3. Oh, wow. They all seem to be working for Efficode, and then there was another person there. Great. Yeah, I mean, a very quick insight, how do we work with trend? There's something called a pestle analysis. We did this, we put this bottom line here, politics, economics, societal, technology, environmental, and legislation. That is a classical pestle analysis. But ladies and gentlemen, that is no longer enough, hasn't been for many years. We also need to dive into people's emotional landscape and also their values. That's what the spiritual dimension is about. It's not about religion, it's simply about values. And when we look at the trend atlas, you could view it as a poster with all the core building blocks shaping tomorrow's society, because it's safe to say that all of those trends are already visible today. The question is just, how will they impact tomorrow? For this presentation today, we decided to cherry pick some trends from the trend atlas to put them into a, risk and opportunity sort of matrix map, in order to just say those are some of the things that we cannot ignore. They're the most influential drivers, and I'm sure you can add a few more. You're all smart people with the postcards or some wild card. You could start to populate this map and make it even better. It is not whether it's this, that, or the other. The point is, get started today to create the future you want to see. And the writing is on the wall. There's multiple factors at play, as I started to say in the beginning. They're all on the horizon, and it is complex. Now, what we see here is that it's an interconnected world. We must not forget the human-centric, dimension, and also what is also a very important thing to always understand. If we have the 4 Ps, ask yourself when you create scenarios, is this good for people? Is it good for the planet? Has it got a meaningful purpose? And yes, if that's true, it probably will feed into the environment rather than feeding off it. That was a quick crash course in how to think, work, and play like a futurist. So you guys are all futurists now. When we look at what's happening out there, I mean, TED Talks. Who here have never watched a TED Talk? Wow. That's interesting. When we ask people about the future and also why they go to work, they say, we want to be part of something bigger than ourselves. We want to go to work and have meaningful conversations. We want to go to work and feel inspired. And this is all about the human connection, right? This festival is Wall Street Journal's The Future of Everything Festival. And it's a festival where everybody gets together, of course, the readers, the customers, the subscribers, but also change makers in the world, inspiring leaders. I think they even had Snoop Dogg there on Entrepreneur. All of that is a little forum to get people together to talk about the future they want. The Guardian in the UK where I live, they also had some fantastic events. I mean, I went to one of those events. They had a dance psychologist teaching you to dance behind the seat, all of that. But it's really very much about that those forums are all inviting multidimensional thinking. Every time I had a quote, I wanted to tell something last night at the dinner, I mentioned the podcast. I mean, I will just mention two in this presentation that I really feel inspired about. It's possible. Do anyone know possible? Okay. It's Reid Hoffman, the co-founder of LinkedIn, and him and Aria Ringer is actually doing a very inspiring podcast with experts from the industry. And in fact, what is important here is that they try to keep everybody in the loop. And just, I think, a month ago, I listened to a podcast, and this is also featuring big on X or Twitter, because this guy, James, and I'm going to try to say his surname, Manikia, he's actually a Zimbabwean who worked with the United Nations, and his mission is, in fact, to create a democratic access globally for everybody to be part of this AI movement. And he's speaking about AI for good. He's now head of research at Google on basically technology and society, but he's actually vice president, but he's really making change happen. I mean, some of the things that he talks about is really that if we all have access, it can empower individuals, transform the economy, science, and also the future of work. But it also invites us to live in a more harmonious future. Some of the things he talked about, which I find personally is very exciting, is that idea that we can use AI to be more, I would say, prepared for the future. For example, all of the satellites that monitors the weather, so we can be more proactive rather than having one catastrophe after the other. So without doubt, of course, you've already understood by now that I'm very passionate about lifelong learning and understanding the world we live in, because that's the only ways that we get the potential tools and knowledge in how to actually make this world a little bit better, but also how to survive in the future. How do we practice? Well, I got shocked when I read that the disengaged workforce cost the global economy almost $8 trillion. I mean, for God's sake, that's 11% of the global GDP, because people are bored at work. They don't know why they go to work. Diversity of thinking, diversity of skills, knowledge could be a way to, to revert this trend. This is a case study from IKEA. I worked with IKEA for a number of years. And in fact, they invested in an innovation lab in Copenhagen called Space 10. Space 10 had a mission to, in fact, create concepts and future ideas for all of the things that are on our mind. Like, how do we create better cities for everyone? How do we create inspiring workplaces? How will we live in the future? What about well-being, the future of food, and AI? And recently, the laboratory has closed down, but this is just one of the projects that they did together with architects and other experts from around the world. It is a future, it's a flat pack housing program where people can just buy a room, and then it's kind of sort of a collaborative community project. But what is interesting about the way IKEA was thinking about the future together with Space 10 is in fact that they motivated people at work. They created a program called Job Crafting. So anyone inside IKEA could collaborate with Space 10 to be part of exciting projects. It was about redefining their work. It was about creating a mindset where they could feel that their strengths and interests and passions was invited into the mix. Now, when you change the idea of your work, the purpose why you go to work, suddenly you feel more motivated, you perform better, and also it boosts your well-being at work. You're less off sick. So naturally, all dimension of diversity is what will lead to a little bit better future where everybody could feel a little bit more engaged. This is Amsterdam, and they are in my deck today because they decided to redraw their map for success in 2018. They invited the British economist Kate Raworth to help them think different about the future. And Kate Raworth wrote a book called Economics for Humans, basically, or the donut economics, how to think like a 21st century economist. In fact, through many ideas and brain storms, they came up with an idea how to transform Amsterdam. And 2020, ladies and gentlemen, they became the world's first donut city. A donut is actually a way to understand that when you live inside the donut, you live within the planetary boundaries, social and planetary boundaries. Now we are living as if we have 3 or 5 planets at our disposal, but we only have one planet. So I think this is a very interesting way to think about the future. So when you want to think long term, you begin with the end in mind. You imagine where will I be in 20, 30, maybe even 100 years, and then you start mapping that journey so you can start build the bridge today. And it's all about creating new bold models where in fact you can immediately show that it's good for people, planet, and purpose. It is said that if we start now and we invest, and it's just 2% of the global GDP in eco-friendly technologies and infrastructure, it could be enough to prevent catastrophic climate change. So if we get people motivated, the people who actually take 11% of the global GDP, we take 2% of that and invest that in green technologies, we're already having a better world. This is a little island in Denmark, Sandsø. It takes half an hour to drive from the bottom to the top, and obviously we know that all the Scandinavians have plenty of islands. I think maybe the Finns have the most. I don't know. We have a few thousand in Denmark. Now, almost 30 years ago, 1997, the Danish Minister for Energy and Sustainability had a competition, and they invited local communities that really were about to die out. It was a matter of innovate and die. They invited the locals to come up with ideas that will actually help them restore the economy and the communities. They were losing all the young people to the cities, and in fact, there was not very much hope. A local at this island, Søren Hermansen, who is the he's actually the professor of environmental study at the Aalborg University, one of the third biggest in Denmark. He came back to the island and said, let's do this together. The proposal won, and they achieved 100% energy independence in under 5 years and became the world's first fully renewable island. And obviously here, the shallow water around here, they planted the first windmill ever planted in the seaside in the world. And now people from everywhere come to learn from them. 2008, they built the Energy Academy, and Søren Hermansen won a very honorable title. He became Hero of the Environment. Time magazine has all of those lists with the top most inspirational people in the world. And obviously it was fantastic for him, and his little quote in that article was, "Think local, act local, and the rest will follow." The economic model is now that people from everywhere in the world come to learn about how they did it. And again, it's about participating in open dialogue. They did that. They created scenarios for the future, foresight. And I guess this is what really defines true change makers. And what we've learned is it also unites communities. Purpose. The capital P in leadership is, in my book, purpose. And you need a good philosophy to follow it through. It's about being interested not just in yourself as a leader. It is about investing in the well-being of people and planet. Patagonia, I think most of you will know Patagonia, right? The outdoor company. This guy started his purpose journey 50 years ago, but he's very modest about things. He says, oh no, we're just getting started. Earth is now our only shareholders. 2 years ago, he said, we are kind of going purpose, not public. Purpose is what works for us. And he set up the Patagonia Purpose Fund in order to give all of the profit from his company, Patagonia, to fight climate change. He's really one of my heroes simply because he's one of those guys who says, I don't just want to be the best in the world. I also want to be the best for the world. We can think of our purpose in many ways, and I think it's a personal journey. It's about our values. It's also, as leaders, what culture is it that we want to cultivate inside our organizations. It's about leveraging economics for humans. How many of you believe that a shorter work week, let's say a 4 hours work week, inspired like by Maynard Keynes, how many of you think that that would be a reality soon? See some hands. How many of you would like to work only 3 days a week? See some hands. Yay! So we meet in the middle. It's going to be a 4-day work week. I think that is really a key to the future. It could be the norm. So we can work for 3 or 4 days and then we can spend and enjoy for the rest of the days. And there will be more work to everyone. Or maybe AI will take care of it. Belgium was the first country in the world to make it a human right to have a 4-day work week. Because what's curious, everywhere we've tested it, we become more productive, we become more efficient. There's something about that 4-day work week. We're less off sick. We are more productive. We actually get more done. This is an alcohol factory in Aalborg, known for the little Aalborg snaps that we import out of Denmark. So when they closed the factory down, they decided to do a community project, and it's an art project. It's due in 2026. The board for this space planned to hire a curator and a director. But then those 2 women came along, and they decided they wanted the job. They both wanted it. I mean, the lucky thing was they were friends, they knew each other, and they came up with a brilliant idea. Let's apply as co-CEOs. They read about it. America, some people were having co-CEOs. And today, that's a reality. They work, they do the same job. They are responsible together. Their workload is the same, and also they're paid the same. Equal in everything, really. It is also about that they set out to have a more, I would say, balanced work-life, reality. And obviously they were given that. And as it looks now, it looks like the project is on time, and it's working really well. And everybody talks about that they are co-CEOs, and it's also great advertising for the space itself. To meet greater well-being targets and actually cultivate more well-being at work, I think this will be the future. And also this idea that we can use new collaborative tech tools and also management models of the future will look very different. But in my books, it's all about trust, and it's about inspiring a culture where trust flourishes. Now, this lady here, Rachel Botsman, you might know her book because she was the one who came up with the collaborative, the Weconomics, the collaborative models about sharing, the sharing economy. Her new book here, it's not so new, it's about 2 years old, called Who Can You Trust? Technology Brought Us Together and It Could Drive Us Apart, is interesting. And one of the things he says here is that the future work depends on leaders who value trust as much as output. So because you can't see people doesn't mean they don't work. It's again about empathy, and it's about building a culture where I would say trust and well-being flourish, because this is the only way you get people to engage with you. We're back home, right? People always ask me, so where do we look for inspiration for the future? Who is doing it right? The Nordics, I would say, being Nordic myself, having traveled around the world, I also worked for several years with Nokia. I worked with Itala. I worked with quite a few techers here in Finland. What we all have in common is that way of sort of a democratic mindset. We're all in this together, but we also believe in open source data sharing as vital to resilience, to trust, safety, and better lives. We like to share because we have a belief system that is good for everyone. So let's do it because it will be better for everyone. Finland, and the Danes, I'm really jealous. You know that this is for 7 years consecutive, 7 years in a row. You've been voted the happiest people in the world. So I was happy to feel the energy right at the beginning. I believe the statistics now. But you're also one of Europe's most digitally advanced. You're early adopters and also creators of open source. So you've got like some good kind of things in your branding book on, why go to Finland. You score very high in tech proficiency. When you look at how tech savvy the rest of Europe is, they only score average of 52%. The Finns are scoring 78%. You got a lot to give to the world. 2018, when there was a lot of hype around the Nordic and everybody looked to the new Nordic model and so on, I found a little site called Good News from Finland. And in there, they talked about that the University of Helsinki of 2018 had just launched a free AI course. In fact, when I last checked, and it's actually called Elements of AI, and it's one of the most popular online courses in the world. 1 million people from 170 countries has taken the AI course. May I ask how many of you have taken this AI course? Wow. It's a good, let's say, 8%, 10%. Did you like it? Was it worth it? Yes. I find it's really empowering. I've seen a few more. Mina, I learned there's quite a few more on there, but I think that is an amazing thing. That is that open source. Give it away. Let's get more people to do it. And I would actually like to give you like a hand for that. I think it's fantastic that you are leading 3 Finnish universities, and I looked at different kind of like who are early adopters of AI. 3 universities talk about that they are now using AI tools to identify skills gaps in real time. So they use it in the university to find out where they can improve and where they can offer more. But also the organizations they work with, they actually real-time tailor-made education programs to lift companies into the next generation of technology. And HR as well. I think you were the first one in the world to adopt AI for sourcing, recruiting, and evaluating, and even communicate with potential candidates. So well done, Finland. I think it's fantastic. And we all know that it's about responsibility. It's about digital inclusion, because they are cornerstone in all interaction in the digital sphere. And also, again, the human element is what takes center place when we talk about technology. Finally here, High Tech, High Touch is an old book. My fellow futurist, John Nesbitt, I've always been very happy. And if you don't know this book, you might have heard about Megatrend. This is the book that he made very famous. This particular book from 2001 actually explored what happens when technology goes faster and faster and faster. He argued also that when technology is more pervasive, then it's more important than ever to actually balance our innate human needs for connection, meaning, and touch. I heard a recent podcast with Eric Schmidt. He said, I'm not worried about us people, about us getting a different mindset because of the use of AI. But what happens if your child grow up, was born, and his or her best friend is an AI? What will that look like? And that really made me think. Now, it is obvious to me that we need more open, honest dialogue around what could be the potential dangerous impact of AI. And it's also about asking informed questions. And it's more crucial than ever. And I guess this is why many CEOs now, they're not even on social media. They just have their own podcast. Do anyone know In Good Company? Okay. It's a brilliant podcast. So Nikolai Tangen, so 2 people showed their hands. He's the CEO of the Northern Sovereign Wealth Fund, and it's the largest public health fund in the world. And Tangen invites inspiring people, especially leaders in the field, to discuss the issues that are shaping our society. In fact, he also noted that he also interviewed Rachel Botsman, the Trust book. He said it's very interesting that people who listened to our fund actually trusted more than people who haven't listened to this to the podcast. So that's an interesting information, I think. He recently interviewed Margrethe Vestager, who is the Danish head of the AI or digital age in the EU, Europe Fit for the Digital Age. And she's now stepping back. You might not know, but this is going to happen also in January. And what they talked about was how technology is transforming our world for both better and for worse. But what Vestager said, our job is to look at the use of technology, because the use cases is where you can see where humans potentially get marginalized, discriminated against, and also not seen for who they truly are. So she always says, wherever you go, wherever you are working with technology, there needs to be humans in the loop. We are going through times that are more difficult than ever, because I guess even though we don't admit it, there is something in the air. I mean, I can feel this change is in me. It makes me a little bit nervous. I mean, everybody forecasted a different outcome for the election in the US, but the US, of what the politics will be there, it will just be another way to look at the world, but we don't know what will happen. So we have a lot of things that is kind of like in the water. It's like bubbling, what will the future look like? But as we navigate this really rapid progress, I think we must remain both curious and critical, because that is the only way forward to ensure a fairer and a little bit better world for the next generation. Think 100 years into the future. I thought without a roadmap, it's difficult to navigate the future. So you can download my presentation somehow. You can also take a photograph, because you will probably hear more about things that will fit into this little roadmap. Now, those values and drivers here are the one that I've explored, and I think they very much talk to us about how we should understand the human in the machine. And together, they're quite a very basic guides to navigate the future with a little bit more purpose and clarity. There are many ways you can build your own scenarios around it, but this is a good place to start. There are four key takeaways that I would like to share with you. The first is really, I would advise you to build transformational ecosystem, new systems that allow for a future that is a bit different to the one we know today. And it's about diversity and collaboration, because this is how you unlock limitless innovation. I mean, people say it can't be done. For God's sake, say, why not? And then show them, because that's how you get ahead. Nurture a change-maker culture. This little island for me is really a nice little thing that they can become a leader. They always say that they are the center of the world, but they make themselves the center of the world, the stewards of the future of our planet and people, and then obviously they invite people to help them make a radical systemic change. Foster meaningful connections. Purpose is key. It's about empathy, because this is how you cultivate trust and authentic well-being. Happiness is also called authentic well-being. And finally, be the human interface. Digital integrity and inclusion ensure honest engagement. So as we move forward, there are going to be lots of presentation today, and as we move forwards in the year and our own life, I think the only question remains for me to ask: how will you champion those values? How will you embed them in your daily work and creating ideas for the future? How can you build a future where technology and humanity will thrive together? Well, the answer starts today. Each of us actually we all have a stake in the future, and we have also somehow the power, collective power, to control it or not to control it, to shape it. Because in my books, the future is not just somewhere we go. We co-create the journey together. Thank you.